The pool sparkled like a blue jewel in Margaret Chen's backyard until Karen Whitmore's voice cut through the summer air like a blade. "This pool belongs to the HOA now," she declared, clutching her clipboard like a weapon. Margaret's hands trembled as she watched her sanctuary being stolen, but Karen had no idea she'd just declared war on the wrong woman. By sunset, sirens would wail, secrets would surface, and one of them would be fighting for their very freedom. The question wasn't who would win, it was who would survive. Margaret Chen stood at her kitchen window, steam rising from her morning coffee as she watched the sun paint golden streaks across her pool's surface. 3 years since David's death, and this was still the only place that brought her peace. The pool where they'd hosted countless barbecues, where their daughter Emma had learned to swim, where Margaret now floated every evening, letting the water wash away another day of grief. The doorbell's sharp chime shattered her reverie. Karen Whitmore stood on the doorstep like a storm cloud in a pressed blazer, her platinum hair pulled into a severe bun that seemed to stretch her features into permanent disapproval. Behind her lurked 2 other HOA board members, Bill Hendricks, whose gut strained against his polo shirt, and Sandra Pierce, whose thin lips had never curved into a genuine smile in the 5 years Margaret had known her. "Margaret," Karen's voice could freeze hell, "we need to discuss your pool situation." Margaret's grip tightened on her coffee mug. "My pool situation. May we come in?" Karen didn't wait for an answer, pushing past Margaret into the foyer. The others followed like obedient dogs. Margaret closed the door harder than necessary. "What's this about, Karen?" Karen unclasped her leather portfolio with theatrical precision, extracting a thick stack of papers. "I've been reviewing the bylaws, all 247 pages, and I've discovered something very interesting about your property, such as your pool." Karen's eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. According to Section 12.7b of the revised HOA Covenant, any recreational facility installed after 1995 that exceeds 400 square feet becomes community property if the original homeowner fails to maintain proper documentation. Margaret's blood turned to ice. "That's ridiculous, is it?" Karen spread the papers across Margaret's dining table like a general planning a siege. "David installed this pool in 2018. The permit was filed, yes, but there's no record of the required HOA, Recreational Facility Impact Assessment. Without that documentation, the pool defaults to community ownership. David handled all the paperwork. David's dead." Karen's words hit like a physical blow, "and his oversights don't excuse your current violations." Bill Hendricks stepped forward, his face flushed with the effort of following Karen's lead. "The board voted last night, 7-2. The pool is now HOA property." Margaret felt the room tilt. "You can't just steal my pool." "We're not stealing anything," Sandra Pierce chimed in, her voice thin and reedy. "We're claiming what was always ours, according to the covenants you signed. When you bought this house," Karen smiled, the first genuine expression Margaret had seen from her all morning. "The pool will be available for community use starting Monday. We'll be installing a new gate system and security cameras. You'll receive a key card like any other resident, a key card to my own backyard, to the community pool located on your property," Karen corrected. "You'll still be responsible for basic maintenance and utilities, of course, but scheduling, rules, and access, that's all HOA jurisdiction now." Margaret's vision blurred. The pool where she'd scattered David's ashes on their anniversary, the pool where she'd cried every night for months, the pool that was her last refuge from the world's cruelty. "This is insane," Margaret whispered. "This is business," Karen replied. "We have 47 families in this community paying premium HOA fees. They deserve premium amenities. A private pool is a wasted resource." "It's not wasted, it's mine." "Not anymore." Karen began collecting her papers. "Oh, and Margaret, the new pool hours are 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. No exceptions. We'll be posting the schedule on the community board." Margaret watched them file toward the door, her mind reeling. 28 years of marriage to David. 5 years of widowhood. Countless nights floating in that pool, talking to his ghost, finding the strength to face another day. And now these vultures wanted to turn her sanctuary into a community splash pad. "Wait," Margaret said. Karen turned, eyebrows raised. "I want to see the documentation. All of it. The bylaw citations, the board meeting minutes, the legal precedents. Of course." Karen's smile widened. "I'll have copies delivered this afternoon, along with the new pool regulations and the liability waiver you'll need to sign." "Liability waiver? You're still the property owner, Margaret. If someone drowns in your pool, you're still liable. The HOA assumes no responsibility for accidents or injuries." The door clicked shut behind them, leaving Margaret alone with the echo of Karen's words and the bitter taste of injustice. She walked to the sliding glass door and stared at her pool. The water was crystal clear, the deck furniture arranged exactly as David had left it. Their life together, crystallized in chlorine and concrete. Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter Emma in Seattle. "Morning, Mom. How's the pool treating you?" Still doing your evening floats? Margaret's thumb hovered over the keyboard. How could she explain that her refuge was being stolen, that the place where she felt closest to David was about to become a playground for strangers? Instead, she typed, "Pools, fine, sweetheart, love, you Banoon." Margaret had read every document Karen delivered. The legalese was dense, but Karen's claims seemed legitimate. The pool permit was technically incomplete. The HOA bylaws were exhaustive and ironclad. David's careful nature had failed him in this one crucial area, but Margaret hadn't survived 5 years of widowhood. By accepting defeat quietly, she pulled out her laptop and began typing. If Karen wanted to play by the rules, Margaret would make sure she knew all of them. 3 hours later, Margaret had uncovered something interesting. Section 12.7b did indeed exist, but it had been quietly amended 6 months ago. The original version required a 2/3 majority vote from the entire HOA membership, not just the board. The amendment reducing it to a simple board vote had been passed during a meeting where only 12 of 47 homeowners were present. Margaret's fingers flew across the keyboard, diving deeper into the bylaws. Karen had been thorough, but not thorough enough. Section 18.3 required 30-day written notice to all affected parties before any property transfers. Margaret had received 12 hours. Section 23.1 mandated that any recreational facility designation must include a professional assessment of structural integrity and safety compliance. No such assessment had been conducted. Section 31.7 stated that any homeowner could challenge HOA decisions through binding arbitration if they could demonstrate procedural violations. Margaret found 17 separate violations of HOA procedure in Karen's pool grab. But the most interesting discovery was in the meeting minutes from 2 years ago. A heated discussion about Karen's own properties, specifically her unpermitted deck expansion that violated setback requirements by 3 feet. The issue had been tabled indefinitely after Karen's election as board president. Margaret leaned back in her chair, pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. Karen's deck, Bill's illegal shed, Sandra's unauthorized fence height. The board members had been protecting each other's violations while hunting for infractions among regular homeowners. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Double quotes. Mrs. Chen. This is Detective Rodriguez with the Sheriff's Department. I'm calling about a complaint filed against you this morning. Margaret's blood chilled. What kind of complaint? Threatening behavior toward HOA board members. Specifically, Karen Whitmore claims you threatened to make her pay for her pool decision. I never, ma'am. I need you to stay calm. We're required to investigate all reported threats. Would you be available to speak with me this afternoon? Margaret's mind raced. Karen was covering her bases, trying to paint Margaret as unhinged. Before she could mount a legal challenge, of course, Detective, I'll be home all afternoon. Thank you, and Mrs. Chen. I'd recommend avoiding any contact with the complainant until this is resolved. The line went dead. Margaret stared at her phone, anger building like pressure in a boiler. Karen wasn't just stealing her pooch, she was trying to destroy her reputation and isolate her from any recourse. But Karen had made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed Margaret was just another grieving widow who would fold under pressure. Margaret picked up her phone and dialed. Emma, it's Mom. I need a favor. Remember that investigative reporter friend of yours from college? The one who specialized in HOA corruption, Sarah? Yeah, she's with the Tribune now. Mom, what's going on? Someone's trying to steal my pool. But I think they've been stealing a lot more than that. Margaret walked to her window and looked out at the pool one more time. The water was still, reflecting the afternoon sky like a mirror, but beneath the surface, currents were shifting. Karen Whitmore had declared war on the wrong woman, and by sunset, she would learn that some battles have consequences no bylaw could predict. The doorbell rang again. Through the peephole, Margaret saw Detective Rodriguez, a tired-looking man in his 50s with kind eyes and the bearing of someone who'd seen too. Detective Rodriguez accepted Margaret's offer of coffee and settled into her living room chair with the weary grace of a man who'd handled too many neighbor disputes. His notepad was already filled with cramped handwriting. Mrs. Chen, I want you to know this complaint seemed unusual from the start, he said, stirring sugar into his cup. Karen Whitmore called our department at 7:42 this morning, claiming you'd threatened her during what she described as a routine HOA matter. Margaret kept her voice steady. Detective, I never threatened anyone. 3 board members came to my house uninvited and informed me they were seizing my pool. I was shocked, but I wasn't threatening. Rodriguez flipped through his notes. She claims you said, quote, you'll regret this. Karen, I'll make sure you pay for what you're doing. I said no such thing, but you did express anger about the pool situation. Margaret chose her words carefully. I expressed disbelief that the HOA could simply claim my property without proper notice or procedure. Rodriguez's pen stopped moving. What do you mean, without proper procedure? Margaret retrieved her laptop and the stack of HOA documents. Detective, I've spent the last 4 hours researching this. The HOA violated 17 separate procedural requirements in their decision. She walked Rodriguez through each violation, watching his expression shift from polite interest to focused attention. When she reached the part about the illegally amended bylaws, he set down his coffee. Mrs. Chen, are you saying the board changed the rules to make this pool seizure possible? I'm saying they changed the rules 6 months ago, during a meeting where only 12 of 47 homeowners were present. The amendment reduced a voting requirement from 2/3 of all homeowners to a simple board majority. Rodriguez made more notes. And you believe this was done specifically to target your pool? I believe it was done to give the board unchecked power over homeowner property. Margaret pulled up another file. Detective, would you like to see the list of board members' own HOA violations that have been conveniently overlooked? 20 minutes later, Rodriguez closed his notepad with a sharp snap. Mrs. Chen, I came here to investigate a harassment complaint. Instead, I think I'm looking at potential fraud and conspiracy charges. What do you mean? If what you're showing me is accurate. The board has been systematically violating their own bylaws while selectively enforcing them against other homeowners. That's a pattern of corruption that goes beyond a simple neighbor dispute. Margaret felt a surge of vindication, but Rodriguez held up a warning hand. However, I still need to address the threatening behavior complaint. Do you have any witnesses to your conversation with the board members this morning? Margaret's heart sank. No, it was just the 4 of us. Then it becomes a he said she said situation regarding the threats. Rodriguez stood to leave, then paused. Mrs. Chen, I can't give you legal advice, but I can tell you that everything you've shown me today will be included in my report. If you're right about these procedural violations, you might want to contact other homeowners who've had disputes with the board. After Rodriguez left, Margaret felt a mix of hope and frustration. She had evidence of corruption, but Karen still held the immediate upper hand with her false complaint. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Sarah Chen from Tribune, very interested in your story. Can you talk at 4 p.m.? Sending her number. Margaret smiled grimly. Time to expand the battlefield. Sarah Chunno, relation. Despite the name arrived precisely at 4 o'clock. She was younger than Margaret expected, with sharp eyes and a digital recorder that she set on the coffee table like a weapon. Mrs. Chen, I've covered 17 HOA corruption stories in the past 3 years. Sarah said, your case has all the hallmarks of systematic abuse. Tell me everything. Margaret recounted the morning's events, then showed Sarah her research. The reporter's eyes lit up when she saw the documentation. This is better than I hoped, Sarah said. But I need more than just your pool situation. I need to establish a pattern of behavior affecting multiple homeowners. How do we do that? We canvass the neighborhood. Tonight, people are more likely to talk after work, and if Karen Whitmore has been operating like this for years, there will be other victims. They started with Margaret's immediate neighbors. Tom Bradley, 2 houses down, initially seemed reluctant to talk, but when Sarah mentioned Karen Whitmore's name, his demeanor changed completely. That woman is a nightmare, Tom said, inviting them onto his porch. Last year, she tried to fine me for having the wrong color mailbox. Said my navy blue didn't match the community aesthetic standards. When I showed her that navy blue was specifically listed as acceptable in the guidelines, she claimed I was using the wrong shade of navy blue. What happened? Sarah asked, her recorder capturing every word. I fought it for 6 months. Spent $1,200 on legal fees before she finally backed down, but not before she made my life hell. Surprise inspections, parking violations for guests, complaints about my lawn height. It was harassment, pure and simple. 3 houses later, they found Linda Morrison, a widow in her 70s who broke down crying when they mentioned the HOA board. They made me remove my rose garden, Linda sobbed. 25 years of growing those roses, and they said the trellises violated sightline requirements. But the Hendersons have a 6-foot privacy fence that blocks the entire street view, and nothing happens to them. Sarah's recorder captured every tear, every shaking word. By 8 o'clock, they had documented 12 separate cases of selective enforcement, procedural violations, and what appeared to be outright harassment of homeowners who dared to question board decisions. Margaret, this is bigger than your pool, Sarah said as they walked back to Margaret's house. This is a criminal conspiracy to defraud homeowners and abuse legal authority. When will you publish? Tomorrow morning's online edition, with a follow-up in Sunday's print edition. But I need to warn you, once this goes public, Karen Whitmore is going to come at you with everything she's got. That evening, Margaret floated in her pool one last time before the HOA claimed it. The water was warm, the stars bright, and for a moment she could almost feel David's presence beside her. Her phone rang. Unknown number again. Hello, Margaret Chen? The voice was gravelly, unfamiliar. Yes, this is Frank Corelli. I'm a retired sheriff's detective, and I live 3 streets over in your HOA community. Detective Rodriguez is a friend of mine, and he mentioned your situation. Margaret's pulse quickened. Oh, I've been watching Karen Whitmore and her board for 2 years now. Ever since they tried to force my daughter to remove her children's swing set, I've been building a file on their activities. What kind of file? The kind that gets people arrested. Mrs. Chen, what if I told you that Karen Whitmore has been taking kickbacks from the landscaping company that gets all the HOA contracts, and that Bill Hendricks has been inflating maintenance costs and pocketing the difference? Margaret nearly dropped the phone. Do you have proof? I have photographs, bank records, and testimony from a landscaper who got tired of paying bribes. Mrs. Chen, your pool situation just gave me the perfect opportunity to take down a criminal operation that's been stealing from this community for years. What do you need from me? Keep fighting them. Keep them focused on you while I gather the last pieces of evidence. And whatever you do, don't let them intimidate you into backing down. Margaret hung up the phone and looked up at the stars. David had always said that sometimes the universe provides exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. Tomorrow, Karen Whitmore would wake up to a newspaper story that exposed her corruption to the entire city. By evening, she'd be facing criminal charges that could put her in prison. But tonight, Margaret had one more call to make. She dialed Detective Rodriguez's number. Detective, this is Margaret Chen. I need to report a crime. Actually, multiple crimes. I have a witness who can provide evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. As she spoke, Margaret watched the pool lights shimmer beneath the water's surface. By this time tomorrow, Karen Whitmore would need more than a lifeguard. She'd need a lawyer, a bail bondsman, and a miracle. The war for Margaret's pool was about to become a reckoning that would destroy everyone who'd tried to steal from their neighbors. And Margaret Chen, the quiet widow they'd underestimated, was about to become their worst nightmare. Part 3. The RSAC co-owner and Margaret woke at dawn to the sound of her phone buzzing incessantly. 12 missed calls, 23 text messages, and her email inbox flooded with notifications. Sarah Chin's expos had gone viral. The headline blazed across the Tribune's homepage: Pool Predators HOA Board accused of systematic fraud and property theft. Margaret's coffee grew cold as she read the article. Sarah had done her homework interviewing 17 homeowners, documenting 50 HOA violations, and presenting a damning portrait of corruption that stretched back for years. The article included photographs of board members' own unpermitted structures, copies of inflated maintenance contracts, and a sidebar titled The $127,000 question: Where did your HOA fees really go? Her doorbell rang at 7:15 a.m. Karen Whitmore stood on the doorstep, but she was no longer the composed predator from yesterday. Her hair was disheveled, her blazer wrinkled, and her eyes held the wild look of a cornered animal. You destroyed me, Karen hissed through the screen door. Margaret didn't open it. I told the truth. The truth. Karen's voice cracked. You've ruined my reputation, my business, my entire life over a goddamn swimming pool. I didn't ruin anything. Karen, you did that yourself when you decided to steal from your neighbors. Karen pressed her face against the screen, her breath fogging the mesh. You have no idea what you've started. The HOA will sue you for defamation. We'll take your house, your savings, everything you have left. With what money? Margaret asked calmly. According to the Tribune, the HOA's legal fund was mysteriously depleted 6 months ago. Something about unauthorized consulting fees paid to a company that doesn't seem to exist. Karen's face went white. You can't prove anything. I don't have to. Frank Corelli already has. The name hit Karen like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, nearly falling off the porch steps. Frank's been watching you for 2 years, Karen. Every forged signature, every inflated invoice, every kickback payment. He has photographs of you meeting with contractors, bank records showing mysterious deposits, and testimony from 3 different vendors who were tired of paying your bribes. Karen's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Oh, and Karen, that threatening behavior complaint you filed against me. Detective Rodriguez reviewed it in light of new evidence. He's recommending charges against you for filing a false police report. Margaret's phone rang. She answered it without taking her eyes off Karen. Double quotes Mrs. Chen. This is Detective Rodriguez. We have a warrant for Karen Whitmore's arrest. Is she still at your residence? Margaret smiled. She's right here, Detective. The patrol cars arrived within minutes, 3 of them, with Detective Rodriguez in the lead. Karen tried to run but only made it to the sidewalk before Officer Martinez caught her arm. Karen Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, filing false police reports, and violation of fiduciary duty. As they read Karen her rights, Margaret noticed neighbors emerging from their houses. Tom Bradley gave her a thumbs up. Linda Morrison was crying tears of relief. Even the Hendersons, who'd never spoken to Margaret before, nodded their approval. But the morning's drama was far from over. At 9:30 a.m., Bill Hendricks was arrested at his office. The charges included conspiracy, embezzlement, and tax evasion. He'd forgotten to report his kickback income to the IRS. Sandra Pierce was taken into custody at 11:15 a.m. outside the bank where she'd been trying to withdraw $23,000 from the HOA's emergency fund. By noon, the local news trucks had arrived. Margaret watched from her kitchen window as reporters interviewed neighbors, all of whom seemed eager to share their HOA horror stories. Her phone rang. Emma's number. "Mom, I just saw the news. Are you okay?" Margaret looked out at her pool, where crime scene tape now fluttered in the breeze, as investigators photographed evidence. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Better than fine, actually," the reporter said. "They arrested 3 people, the entire HOA board. Turns out they've been stealing from the community for years." "And your pool?" Margaret smiled. "Well, that's an interesting question. Technically, the HOA's decision to seize it was based on fraudulent bylaws passed by people who are now facing felony charges. I'm guessing the court will reverse that decision pretty quickly." At 2 p.m., Margaret's doorbell rang again. This time it was Frank Corellia, a stocky man in his 60s, with kind eyes and calloused hands. "Mrs. Chen, I wanted to thank you," he said. "Your fight over the pool gave me the perfect opportunity to expose what they were doing." "How did you gather all that evidence?" Frank chuckled. 28 years as a detective teaches you a few things about following paper trails. Plus, Karen got sloppy. She actually tried to bribe me last month when I questioned some landscaping charges. She tried to bribe a retired police detective. $50 to overlook some invoice discrepancies. I recorded the whole conversation. That evening, Margaret sat by her pool with a glass of wine, watching the sunset over the water. The crime scene tape was gone. The investigators had finished their work, and the water was crystal clear once again. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen. "Update. DA's office says they're looking at RICO charges. This could put all 3 away for 10 to 15 years. Your pool story just brought down a criminal enterprise." Another text, this one from Tom Bradley. "Emergency HOA meeting tomorrow night. We're dissolving the current board and electing new leadership. Want to be president?" Margaret laughed out loud. After 5 years of quiet grief, she'd accidentally become the leader of a homeowner revolution. But the best message came from Detective Rodriguez. "Mrs. Chen, thought you'd like to know judge signed an emergency order reversing all HOA decisions made in the past year. Your pool is officially yours again. Also, Karen Whitmore's bail was set at $250,000. She's not getting out anytime soon." As darkness fell, Margaret slipped into the pool for her evening float. The water was warm, peaceful, exactly as it had been every night since David's death. But something was different now. The weight of grief that had pressed down on her for so long felt lighter, replaced by something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Her phone rang one final time. Unknown number. "Hello, is this Margaret Chen?" The voice was young, nervous. "Yes. This is Jessica Walsh from Channel 7 News. We're doing a follow-up story on the HOA arrests, and we'd like to interview you about how you uncovered the corruption." Margaret looked up at the stars, remembering David's voice. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do. "I'll do the interview," Margaret said. "But I want you to understand something. This was never about just my pool. This was about standing up to bullies who thought they could steal from people because those people were too scared or too tired to fight back. That's exactly the angle we want to pursue. Would tomorrow morning work?" After Margaret hung up, she floated in silence for a long time. 3 days ago, she'd been a grieving widow trying to protect her last sanctuary. Tonight, she was the woman who'd brought down a criminal conspiracy and become the voice for everyone who'd ever been bullied by petty tyrants with clipboards and bylaws. Karen Whitmore had demanded Margaret's pool for the HOA, thinking she was targeting an easy victim. Instead, she'd awakened a sleeping dragon who'd burned down everything Karen had built on lies and theft. The pool water lapped gently against the sides, reflecting the moon like a mirror. Margaret closed her eyes and whispered, "David, I think you would have been proud." Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, probably another arrest warrant being served. The investigation was far from over, and Margaret suspected they'd find even more corruption before it was finished. But tonight, justice had been served with a splash. And Margaret Chen, the quiet widow who'd just wanted to keep her pool, had learned that sometimes the best way to honor the dead is to fight like hell for the living. The war was over. The pool was hers. And Karen Whitmore would indeed need more than a lifeguard. She'd need a miracle to avoid spending the next decade behind bars. Margaret smiled and sank deeper into the warm water. Finally, at peace.